Could Florida State's rev share contracts with their players, many of which are not signed, cause problems during fall camp and this season?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm going to be talking about a lot of different things involving lawyers. It's not my first choice, but this is very important stuff, not just for Florida State, not just for the ACC, the Power Four, but across college athletics. Rev share is here, whether you like it or not. I have some news from some personal information I got, and I also want to reference a few other people. And we're also going to talk about Jim Phillips in the ACC with the ACC Media Days. He made an announcement that kind of caught my eye. I wondered when it was going to come, honestly, and that is about injury reports. I have a very strong take on why you should not pay much attention to those, but they are here and what it means for Florida State and you as a fan. So let's start off with the rev share. What am I talking about? Well, it's pretty simple. The house settlement. You get X amount of dollars as a player from the institution you play for, Florida State, Clemson, etc. In addition to that, how does it get structured? Yes, the word lawyer comes into play here. For those of you that are lawyers, I'm sure you probably enjoy this more than me, but I just want to give my basic take, the information that I have, etc., and kind of go from there. But there are a lot of concerns right now with Florida State for whatever reason, because the Noles have a team of lawyers, allegedly, that are very specific about things in the contract that aren't making a lot of people happy. I'm just going to list what I have heard. In addition to it, this is something I'd heard a while back, had a little more reinforcement today. But Brendan over at Noles 24/7 has a very long post on their message board about this same stuff, and he's got a lot more info than I do. Go check that post out. If you don't subscribe to Noles 24/7, I highly recommend it. They do a tremendous job. And to be honest, his information, at least in the areas that I'd gained stuff, was like spot on. And he's got even more info than I do. So I'm going to use a few clip notes from him as well. But first, the info that I got. Number one, they're in trouble. That was the quick phrase that I was given by a source that is in this industry that deals with contracts, etc. They're in trouble. Talking about Florida State. And here's why he said it. It's a combination of events and every contract's different. But number one, it's just the language. Florida State has too many things in their contract, which he said was 17 pages. That seems like a lot. 17 pages in regards to, among other things, how a player would either A, lose their pay, or B, be fined. Let me give you a few examples. At first, I didn't believe this, the first thing that he mentioned, but he confirmed it. If a player is injured at Florida State during a game, technically speaking, by the language that he said, and again, I'm just passing along, a player could lose his money. Really? Is that legal? Like that's in the contract they're trying to give to these players? You can't be serious. And he's like, yeah, I'm being serious. I'm like, that is a absolute no end. Go, just you're done if you were to implement that and then actually execute it. If you tell a player who busted his butt, goes out there and he just gets hurt, it's football, it is barbaric, that he's not getting paid after he gets injured, you wouldn't sign another recruit. You'd be done. You'd have transfers out the door. I'm just absolutely floored that in any way, shape, or form, that is in the contract. And for the record, I have not seen one, and I'm kind of glad I haven't. I would be so angry, I'd probably get on here and say things that I shouldn't. But really? If he gets hurt, he gets paid. Like, there's just no way around it. You can't do that. Forget the morality part. Just looking at it from the perspective of like how college football works. You're not drafting guys. You are recruiting them. How do you think that's going to go with transfer portal, underclassmen recruiting, etc.? I'm like, that is just nuts. But anyway, we'll see if that stuff stays in contracts, and every single contract is individualized. So as the phrase goes, red line, a lawyer or somebody that knows, a business handler, will go through and look at stuff, say this has to go or we're not signing, et cetera. And it's just a negotiation. But there is no way I would let a client of mine ever sign something that said my player gets hurt while actually playing, and it's a situation where that player doesn't get money after. Like, there's no way. I still have my doubts. There's got to be something off about that. That just, I'd have to read the language to completely believe it. But he reinforced again twice that he said, "Yo, that's actually in the contract that I read." I was like, okay, that is concerning. 2, this is the one where it gets really iffy, and it's just lawyer talk and it's negotiation. I wouldn't like this if they tried it, but I understand it's a business. So here we go. The contracts for the most part are 2 years, and that's pretty common across football. I don't care if it's Texas, Notre Dame, USC, whatever. They usually want you for multiple years. But the way I was explained, the third-year option only falls under Florida State's jurisdiction. In other words, if they want you for the same year, they can re-up it, but there's no language that says the player can do that or get out of it. That's not going to fly either. One-way streets don't work in business. It's just, that is the mass exodus for the transfer portal waiting to happen. If Florida State goes hardline on this, this program will go belly up. And it won't have anything to do with Norvell. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out. This is people above, have nothing to do with coaching staff. Zero. This is people that have to do with lawyers, athletic department, etc. So I highly doubt, like, Norvell probably doesn't like this stuff either. And that's also why I got a feeling that a lot of this is going to go away. We'll come back to this once we get to fall camp, and I'll talk about that in a second. But there is no way in the world I would allow the school to have that option, and we don't get any kind of ability to maneuver as well. Like if I was an agent, I'm not, but that's just common sense. So I found that very odd. The third thing, and this is some players not, the amount of money, there's just a lot of bickering. That's par for the course. I don't have any problem with that. What a value for a player is, according to the school, and vice versa. Everybody's got a different number. There's always going to be contract problems just based on the total sum. It is what it is. To that point, in a completely different conversation I had today, talking to somebody about recruiting, there's a player that I was told Florida State's recruiting that their offer is as competitive as any other schools in the country. So again, it depends on the individual contract situation. It is what it is. I don't know how quickly this kind of stuff will get resolved, and we're going to talk about that next year on Locked On Seminoles, because fall camp starts here pretty quick. How fast are these rev share deals going to get done? And if they don't, how does that impact fall camp? That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head over to the ball game with your friends, family, to check it out? Maybe it's game day. You want to go and check out a great game. Maybe there's a great pitcher on the mound that day, whatever it may be. But the easiest way to grab last minute tickets, whether it's Braves, whether it's Marlins or anybody else, is to go through GameTime, because it's right there on your phone. It's very easy, and it will get you to where you need to go for the best price possible, because the price you see at the beginning is the same one that you will see at checkout. So with the money you save on those tickets, you can splurge on other things like food, taking more friends to have more fun. GameTime makes buying tickets fast and simple. You don't have to worry about a lot of different things going on the app. You find your seat, you click on it, and you look and see where you are to the pitcher's mound or whatever the event is, concert, movie theater, or anything else. So take the GameTime opportunity for yourself to go to a baseball game. Check it out. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty of MLB. Have some fun. Go check out GameTime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. That's GameTime. Again, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. While you have a chance, please like, please subscribe. Please make sure you share this podcast. It's a lot of fun for me. I hope you enjoy it as well. Locked On Seminoles, I've been doing this for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in late August. So it's been a lot of fun over the last 23 months, and I think we're going to have a lot more fun this season the Noles should rebound, and it should be a pretty interesting season to begin, especially with Alabama. And we're going to have coverage every day talking about all the different things going on with the Noles. Now, as for the rev share and how it works for the immediate future, I do have the one main concern. Straight up, even one contract going sideways with a current player can impact the locker room. You see it all the time in the NFL. You try to keep that stuff out of your personal headspace, but we're human, right? The players, their parents, their old high school coaches, 7-on-7 coaches, their agents. There's a lot of different people that's important to. If that doesn't go well by the players' perception or anybody around them, it can cause problems for any program, Florida State included. So here are a few things that I want to ask, just in general. Like if you were at Florida State, how would you take this? If you were a recruit, whatever side you want to go with, just a few things. Could these contracts change fall camp, meaning maybe one of these contracts, maybe more, end up in a holdout? We're going to see it somewhere. It's going to happen. That can cause problems during fall camp. These aren't pro players, folks. These are college kids. So with that being stated, we could see teams having massive changes to what they think they should get, or they had something taken out of the contract and blah, blah, blah. The bargaining doesn't go well. Maybe that's a key guy. If it is, maybe it's a key offensive lineman. Maybe it's a defensive player, whatever. How does that impact practice? No matter which side you're on, that's probably not good, but money is money. The yearly contracts and all the little idiosyncrasies with them, for any reason, one of these can go sideways. It could impact the Noles and some of their competition as well. Secondarily, how many holdouts do you think it will be on average? Not just Florida State, Florida, Georgia, Clemson, these major programs. It's going to happen in some capacity. Plus, for full disclosure, as a reminder, August 1st is the day that all these NIL deals got to go through the NIL clearinghouse for like recruiting and stuff. I assume this stuff does too. I don't know why it wouldn't. It's the same kind of deal that's just players on campus as opposed to recruits. So they're going to be busy. And I don't know the time frame for, like, let's say on the 3rd, the deal hasn't been figured out yet and Florida State calls. How long does that stuff take? We don't have any precedent for it. The practice will have already started by the time you're turning those in. If a guy is, quote unquote, miles apart on Florida State's roster in what his contract is going to be for this season, he might suddenly be hurt, if you know what I mean. This is going to be a problem in some capacity for some school. I don't know which one it's going to be. Maybe it's Florida State, maybe it's not, but it's pretty interesting. And finally here, just one other question. What's team morale going to be if there's a key player that people think is getting a raw deal? Because these kids are going to talk. How does that impact college players? I'm not sure, because this is new. I don't have any precedent for this either. I can only speculate to a certain degree. I'm as fascinated as everybody else. I don't really like the process, although I understand. But how much are we going to see? Is it going to be obvious body language, like the media goes to a practice, even if it's just, like the stretching and all that? You can tell when guys are down. You're not going to hide it very much, especially football players. For the majority, over half that roster is going to be more extroverted or leaning that way. You're going to tell when something's off. So we're probably going to hear some reports there as well. Now, on that front, I mentioned a minute ago that Brendan over at Noles 24/7, he's got a lot more notes than I do, and he does a great job over there at Noles 24/7. You should at least check it out once in a while. And on their private board, just a few notes that he talked about. He says upwards of 50 players have yet to execute their contract with Florida State. Now, again, August 1st is like the day for the clearinghouse and all that stuff. But that's a lot. I don't know how many players the Noles will have on scholarship this year, but that's roughly half your roster. That's a lot, and it's somewhat concerning. As for the agents and stuff, he said, looking at other programs, I've gathered that the language in FSU's contract is even more in-depth than they've seen. That's what I was talking about earlier. 17 pages is what I was told. I assume they're all pretty similar, with some prohibitive language contributing to part of the holdup in negotiations. I was told exactly the same thing. You can make them as complicated or easy as you want. one agent said. I agree, but that's still concerning. Per multiple sources, according to Brendan, it's taking about 2 weeks for athletic side of the operation to confirm suggested edits have been received and sent to the university council. That seems pretty slow. They need to speed that up, because if this goes 2 or 3 times back and forth, it's going to be into the season before the kid gets his contract signed. That's no bueno. They have to figure that out very quickly. He said August 15th, and I agree with this, is the date it's been floated to him where the contracts need to be done. I totally agree, because at that point, you're going into game prep. Bama is August 30th, so you got 2 weeks before you play. You kind of need to have a contract signed. If they don't, that's concerning. As far as like all the other stuff, I'm just kind of going through like he's got a really, really long section of information here. They've already paid some of the players their first payment on July 15th. Let's see. This is also very true. I've heard this as well. Different agents have different viewpoints on the contracts and FSU's approach, which does make sense. They have all different levels of clients with different goals, and terms might vary slightly from client to client. I've heard the exact same thing. Let's see. Others have said they would be doing the same thing FSU is doing. I don't think they're trying to screw anyone over. Others have started hot over the terms and cooled down as they began to work closer with Florida State. I've heard similar on that as well. The one thing, and I just want to reiterate this from the beginning, he brought it up too. I want to let them play out before reporting further. He says, generally points have been varied from the injury clause, media rights. In other words, does a player get money, or does the school on some of the media stuff? So maybe the language needs to be cleared up on Florida State's end. The buyout terms, that's something I talked about year 2, year 3. That's one of the things I've heard. And even payment amount when it comes to whether the university's stipends were factored into the initial term. So it sounds like that part's more about specifics, just making sure there's no question about how much it is and who's exactly paying it. But still, that's a lot of information that Florida State needs to figure out, because if they don't, I think there's going to be some problems. And again, holdouts are certainly a possibility. When we come back, I'm going to talk about the opportunity for ACC injury reports. They're going to be mandatory now. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's next here on Locked On Seminoles. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Please like and subscribe. Truly appreciate you tuning in. Now, Jim Phillips is not my favorite, and I highly doubt he's favorite of anybody here that's watching this podcast that likes the Noles. But he did announce during ACC Media Days, talking about the ability for the ACC now to use an injury report 2 days before a game. So like a Saturday game would be Thursday. Then each day there's an update. Now he can say whatever he wants, but I know he's got a really tough spot here. And again, I'm not a Jim Phillips guy, but I understand this. You're not going to tell me, and I don't care if they swear on the Bible, on their mother's grave, or anything else, that there isn't pressure from the casinos to make this happen. However, Phillips, and I'm just giving the roundabout, he talked about this over and over again in his speech, is saying that players are getting pressure from people they know and people that may not be so scrupulous to give up information about whether they are or not injured. That's not false, but I believe there's money exchanging hands somewhere that shouldn't be for this to happen. I'm not buying it. That's just me. In my speculation, I had nothing to do with Phillips' speech, but they've been trying to get this implemented forever in college. But a couple of points before I read a few of the things that Jim said specifically in quotes. Number one, if you gamble on college football, by all means, that's your choice. But if you ever, in any way, shape, or form, make a bet just strictly based on that injury report for, I don't care what game it is, Florida State or otherwise, you're making an idiotic decision. Here's why. I can tell you from firsthand experience with players and coaches, face-to-face conversations, on the phone, seeing guys at practice, etc. There are 3 things that always happen with injury reports: lies, lies, and more lies. Period. There are times players don't tell coaches when they're banged up. I know that firsthand. I know from talking to coaches that they lie about injury reports. So if you believe the crap, whether it's regulated by the ACC or not, and you gamble on a game because of it, that's on you. There will never be a consistency with injury reports at any level. It is not advantageous for those people to give out information, especially if you're a quarterback. Are you going to let the defense know, oh, my elbow's hurting? Really? What do you think the defense is going to do? 0% chance. With all that said, do what you want, but choose wisely when you gamble. Now, here are a few of the comments from Phillips. And this first one, he was spot on about that I'm going to read. Coaches are hard to change, but when we told them that we were going to do it, no one said anything on the call. I don't know what that meant other than that they were accepting it, Phillips said. It's the right thing. It's the right thing. I understand, and every coach has to do what they have to do in order to get their team ready, and there's always gamesmanship, always. That's been around for 100 years, and it's going to continue, but it's the right thing. Now, let me just put this in perspective. Jim knows how to use language very, very well. Gamesmanship is another word for they're lying. We all know coaches lie. Nobody's better at it than Belichick. Ironically, he's now in the ACC at North Carolina. With that being stated, again, it's the same application here. You can't use these injury reports as anything other than just fodder. It's worthless. Phillips continues. There's stresses on our student athletes from individuals that are trying to garner information, and sometimes it's pretty innocent because they just want to know. That's true. They're a big fan, but other times it really does trickle and lead yourself to the gambling and sports wagering kind of path. He's not wrong about that either. We haven't come up with a fine policy yet. We're kind of discussing that, but we're also liking to think what people are going to do, what they've asked to do, and we hope that it wouldn't come down to that. By the way, just interjecting, if they find a school over this, it's not going to end well for them. Good luck. You tick off coaches on the college football side in a league where teams have been recently trying to leave. Yeah, I don't think that's going to end very, very well for you. But I digress because everybody's got their own opinion. We'll see how that goes. All right, here's a little more from Phillips. Schools will have to identify who that person's going to be, somebody that's banged up. For football, it would be 2 days before, the day before, and then 2 hours before kick. 2 hours before kick, if that doesn't strike you as gambling, come on, man. It's because of the people in Vegas. The kids have already talked to everybody. They're already at the locker room. 2 hours before kick, give me a break. For basketball and baseball, it will be 1 day before, then 2 hours before tip-off for first pitch. So again, you can look at this any way you want, and Jim's just the spokesperson. He's put in the awkward spot. But Mr. Phillips is still fibbing because there's really nothing else he can do. 2 hours before pitch, before tip-off, before kickoff, that is 100% for the gamblers. No more, no less. How many players you really think that have spent all week practicing, if they got banged up in warm-ups, unless it's really bad, they're not telling anybody, man. That's hilarious. They're just not going to do it. So whatever, the night before they stub their toe, whatever, they're not going to tell anybody. It's just not how it works. I found this stuff pretty hilarious. And again, these are firsthand information from talking to players for years and years and years. That's not how football players work, man. Y'all can believe whatever you want, but again, this firsthand information. As for coaches with this, they're also put in a bad spot. If it's deemed that one of their players should have been on the report, but that player didn't give the information to the training staff, coaching staff, whatever it is, how are they held responsible? Answer me that, because again, I guarantee you every week there will be players that lie. 100%. How do you do that? So Phillips was probably pretty smart to say, I hope it doesn't come to that with fines and all that. They've got to have guy just openly say, yep, we lied. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't see how that works. But at any rate, it's college football, and there's always going to be gamesmanship, quoting Phillips. So maybe there'll be something to this, but it's going to be on ACC.com, the updates, just so you know. And I'm sure for those of you who use social media a lot, as soon as it goes up, you'll see different reporters, different writers, Knowles 24/7, whatever, tweet out or put something on Instagram or do a comment that goes on TikTok. Hey, so-and-so for Clemson's banged up. They reported this. That may be true, but what about the other three guys that are hurt that they didn't mention? And that guy that's out, he's been on the sideline in a boot for 2 weeks anyway. Everybody knew it. You just try to give the obvious information, the stuff that doesn't have a cast, doesn't have a bandage. Are they giving that out? Really? You sure they're doing that? How would you know? Good luck. So again, I don't buy it, not one iota, and everybody has their opinion about it. But this injury stuff to me is just all about Vegas and them trying to get money. No more, no less. Phillips trying to make it sound like it was protecting the athletes and stuff. It's just the opposite, in my opinion, because when defensive players know offensive players are banged up, they're going to target them, and vice versa. There's just people like that. There is no way in the world I would tell my kid, hey, I want you to give out injury information about your elbow being sore and this and that. It just doesn't make sense. No way in the world. And I highlight out many coaches do. So we'll see how this goes in the first week. Won't necessarily be the ACC. Big Ten's got a rule that's already been implemented. When's the first time a school gets hit with a penalty? Has it happened yet? If anybody has, please comment below. I'm not sure, but at the same time, I find it very interesting because I don't think that's going to go over very well. I really don't. Would you find somebody over something like that? And what would it be? Very, very odd. But again, everybody has their own opinion on it. I'm obviously not a big fan, so everybody can make their own thought process on it and go from there. So anyway, everybody, I appreciate you coming in to check out Locked On Seminoles. Truly appreciate that. Please like, please subscribe. We will see you again soon here on Locked On Seminoles.